Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, the Quad Open RAN Forum. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You have joined the presentation listening using your computer speaker system by default. If you have any technical issues, please use the question box to let us know. Today's webinar is being recorded and you'll receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view the recording. And now I'd like to introduce Alexander Botting, Director of International Programs for the Open RAN Policy Coalition.
Thank you. Good morning, good evening, and welcome to the Quad Open RAN Forum. My name is Alex Botting. I'm International Director of the Open RAN Policy Coalition and will be emceeing today's event. We've a fantastic lineup of speakers for today's discussion, including CEOs and CTOs from many of the world's leading mobile network operators and network infrastructure providers. They're joined by senior officials from the governments of Australia, India, Japan, and the United States. We thank our speakers for joining us today and also our association partners who helped to bring this event together, Assocham India, BSA the Software Alliance, Keidanren, and the US Chamber of Commerce. The Open RAN Policy Coalition was established in May 2020 to promote policies that will advance the adoption of open and interoperable solutions in the RAN. In the years since, ORPC has engaged with over 30 governments around the world to raise awareness and discuss what they can do to promote Open RAN adoption. Those discussions have been overwhelmingly positive, and it's clear to see the interest that governments have brought to the table. In the case of Japan, the US, the UK, and Germany, that interest has already been matched by action in the form of policies that invest in testing facilities, procurement incentives for the private sector, and support for the emergence and growth of SMEs. Just as important is the progress that we've made on the industry side. With widespread investment of monetary and human resources, the Open RAN adoption curve has risen rapidly. Today, there are Open RAN deployments in over 35 countries around the world, incorporating dozens of vendors from across Europe, the Middle East, North America, and Asia Pacific. In addition, operators in Europe and the Middle East have signed MOUs committing to the timely deployment of Open RAN and are working busily to achieve that goal. The Quad countries are home to around a quarter of the world's population and more than a third of its GDP, as well as many of the world's leading tech and telecoms companies. They are uniquely well positioned to forge a common approach to policies at the intersection of technology, security, and the economy. This approach should reject protectionism, embrace competition, security, and technological neutrality. The Quad governments themselves have emphasized the importance of secure and trusted network infrastructure and the need for greater vendor diversity across the telecoms ecosystem. These are objectives that Open RAN can help to deliver. Meanwhile, their comparative advantages position companies from all four countries to benefit from lower barriers to entry. While operators must retain the freedom to make deployment decisions based upon the unique features of their networks, governments are well positioned to facilitate the evolution to Open RAN by providing support for R&D and export financing, establishing tax incentives for operator procurement, demonstrating the capabilities of Open RAN, removing regulatory barriers to investment, and convening all key stakeholders, as we're doing today and tomorrow. The Open RAN Policy Coalition and our partner associations stand ready to work with the Quad government as they develop policies to promote Open RAN adoption, both individually and together. And with that, it's my distinct pleasure to turn the floor over to Mr. Yasuo Tawara, Director General of the Global Strategy Bureau in the Government of Japan's Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications. Tawara-san, the floor is yours.
Thank you for your introduction. Okay. I'm delighted to join the Quad Open RAN Forum, and I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the ORPC, industries, and other organizations for coordinating today's meeting. Needless to say, ICT infrastructure such as 5G plays important roles in our life and socio-economic activity. And its importance is increasing year by year, with innovation and application of ICT being progressed. Especially in the expansion of COVID-19 pandemic, ICT has been utilized in wider area of our life, which made ICT more essential to our life. Therefore, the importance of secure, open, and transparent ICT as an essential social infrastructure has become huge, and we should cooperate with a variety of stakeholders. In this regard, as a representative from the Japanese government, I would like to support the significance of today's forum as a good example of public-private cooperations. In addition, we believe it is quite important to cooperate among like-minded countries that shares values such as privacy and democracy to work on open 5G. In that sense, we recognize that it is important to first cooperate among Quad countries, but also to expand the cooperation with other like-minded countries. Thus, I'm going to introduce our thought and effort on open 5G of our countries. For example, Japan considers that we face security risks that come from untrustworthy supply chain and vendor lock-in architecture of mobile networks. To cope with this problem, we are internationally promoting the open and interoperable 5G network architecture. In Japan, domestic operators and vendors such as NTT Docomo, Rakuten, NEC, and Fujitsu are working with overseas companies such as the US companies to build all-RAN-based networks. We would like to continue to support the cooperation of the private sectors among like-minded countries. On the other hand, there are technical challenges in constructing and stably operating the network comprised of devices from multiple vendors. Therefore, MIC has been implementing various promotional measures such as the tax incentive program and budgetary support for around the project. I will mention the tax incentive program in Japan at the second panel. Also, in order to facilitate development of all-RAN-based architecture, MIC conducted an R&D project to save time and cost on all-RAN interoperability testing with operators and vendors. This project successfully reduced the time and cost for interoperability testing by 30%. In addition to this R&D project, MIC are going to launch another project on the all-RAN testbed as core evaluation system of the Open Test and Integration Center, OTIC, Japan in fiscal year 2021. The project focus will be interoperability testing on coordinated operation, including carrier aggregation among all-RAN-based stations manufactured by different vendors. This project should expand the OTIC Japan to more advanced testbed that can evaluate the function and the performance of multi-vendor base stations. MIC believes this would be a valuable addition for the OTIC Japan to promote Open RAN. In addition, METI is also supporting the development of interoperability verification technology with NEC, planning to set up test centers in London, UK, and Fujitsu in Texas, USA. They plan to evaluate and verify multi-vendor interoperability of mobile base stations that comply with O-RAN. Transformation of the global 5G device market requires international public and private collaborative efforts. In this sense, Japan would like to collaborate with both like-minded governments and industries and foster an international coordination and dissemination of O-RAN and VRAN, in which the Japanese industries are actively involved. From this year, MIC will start to extend financial support for 5G openness and virtualization demonstration experiments by our industry in overseas. This program will contribute to further technological innovations. Japan would like to improve and promote uptake of Open RAN and internationally promote diversification of 5G. We hope to deepen the operation among us and would like to hear your thoughts and ideas. That concludes my explanation of Japan policy. Today, we have planned 2 panel discussions involving public-private players and corporate CEOs, where stakeholders can exchange their views from a variety of perspectives. I look forward to fruitful discussions. I will be attending the panel discussion on security, and I'm looking forward to discussing with other panelists. Besides, the forum will have other sessions tomorrow, and more working level and technical discussion will be held. I expect various levels of discussion will make the result of this forum more meaningful. Lastly, we are preparing for the 5G diversification subgroup expected to be held in August or so. We will be utilizing discussions and use case discussed during this forum and hope for hearing your ideas. Throughout the first subgroup, I hope to closely cooperate with stakeholders of the US, Australia, and India. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Tawara-san. And thank you for staying up late. I know that it's getting on late in Tokyo already, and you'll be sticking with us through to the end of the programming. So we certainly look forward to hearing you on the Security of Open RAN panel. Speaking of staying up late, the same is true for Mr. Mark Ablong, who's our next speaker. Mark is Deputy Secretary for National Resilience and Cybersecurity within the Australian Department of Home Affairs. I believe it's sometime around 10:15 where you are, so thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Alex, and to Tawara-san for your opening remarks, and thank you to the Open RAN Policy Coalition for the opportunity today to provide some remarks in our inaugural Quad Open RAN Forum. I'd like to particularly welcome the participation of industry partners from each of the Quad countries, including Australia's very own Telstra, for what should prove to be a fruitful and constructive discussion. This is a timely and important event, bringing together government and industry leaders from the US, Japan, India, and Australia to discuss secure and trusted network infrastructure, the need for greater vendor diversity, and the opportunity to leverage innovation across the Quad community to ensure our nation's shared interests and values. This forum is a critical opportunity for us to share information, views, and policies on open radio access network deployments, as well as think about the future of ORAN in a more complex operating environment. I'd like to start my remarks with some thoughts on the operating environment we see today in the midst of a global pandemic and an increasingly digital world where the traditional roles of communications and network service providers, application and business service providers, and consumers themselves are increasingly blurred. The concept of network security, hardware, software, vendor-operated divides, and even geographic locations are all at a crossroads and are evolving quite rapidly. The COVID-19 pandemic has spurred a sharp increase in digital connectivity as communications, consumers, and businesses try to remain connected in societies that need to remain physically distanced, and travel, particularly international travel, remains out of reach for so many. Our telecommunication networks have made this possible and have kept the deep connections between our societies, between our families, and our communities. At the same time, we've seen an increasing level of malicious and malign activity targeting vulnerable communities and businesses that seek to take advantage for profit or other motives of that digital connectivity. Being connected can be both a blessing and a curse. This dichotomy highlights to us in government an ever-growing and collective need for both resilience and security in our thinking on digital connectivity. Perhaps the other strategic lesson we've learned from the COVID-19 pandemic, which has seen increasing attention paid to the need to ensure continued supply of essential goods and services, whether health services and products, critical infrastructure services, or business and consumer goods, supply chains, particularly technology supply chains, do matter. Being able to trust your supply chains, understand their points of failure and their vulnerabilities, and ensure you can continue to deliver the goods and services you're responsible for has become a fundamental national as well as business responsibility. And in the present moment, in the complex geostrategic environment we face, over-reliance on particular trade relationships, markets, or monopolistic vendors can create real strategic vulnerabilities for both nation states and for businesses. A diverse and competitive market of secure and trusted suppliers is a necessity for the long-term security and prosperity of our economies. Market diversity, which allows us to have more competition, to create innovation in product and service delivery, and give nation states and companies greater resilience to unexpected shocks, withdrawal of supply, or trade and transportation disruptions, is critical. For governments in the digital and communications domain we are discussing today, market diversity means more resilient supply chains and ongoing confidence that our citizens have access to the most secure connectivity available. While this level of complexity, both globally and in the context of changing and evolving telecommunications networks, we must work together to encourage secure, competitive, and diverse technological developments. Australia has some ideas on how this Quad grouping might do this. To support market diversity, we should start to consider the level of ongoing support we provide to existing and potential technology solutions and whether they suffice for the future, how we enable the scaling of new and trustworthy solutions, and how we reduce the appeal of solutions that introduce unacceptable risk or vulnerability. The private sector needs to see strong signals from governments that we will prioritise security, openness, and interoperability in the marketplace. This means creating an enabling environment to ensure that telecommunication carriers can competitively access equipment markets that meet their business needs, but it also means identifying and outlining clear, sensible security expectations to carriers, vendors, and operators. Our market diversification efforts must sit alongside other pillars in a multi-pronged approach to help manage the risks from critical technologies, such as telecommunications, and to avoid disruption of supply chains. Standardization, regulatory controls, and government industry collaboration, partnership, and communication will be vital. To properly address and mitigate threats, security needs to be built in from the ground up and considered during the design phase of telecommunications and other critical technologies. These security protections should extend across both the hardware that enables internet-connected connectivity, as well as through the endpoints that users engage with, including through internet-connected devices and software. These core principles should drive our collective efforts to Open RAN and beyond. Australia has already adopted a strong and comprehensive foundation for telecommunications security, informed by our long-term national security planning and strategic risk assessments. Our approach is enabled by our telecommunications sector security reforms. These reforms have created a framework to manage national security risks associated with the supply of equipment, services, and support arrangements to Australian telecommunications industry and providers. Complementary to these reforms, the Australian government will soon release its critical technology supply chain principles with 3 pillars: security by design, transparency, and autonomy and integrity. These core principles could go beyond Australian shores to drive and shape our collective Quad efforts. And in response to evolving threats to Australian mobile networks, the Australian government will invest $31.7 million to create a secure G connectivity test lab to test innovative 5G security solutions with industry, and to establish a 6G security and development program to invest in foundational 6G research. The test lab will also support new companies to test innovative, secure technological solutions that support a competitive and diverse telecommunications market, helping them to scale and to be commercialized. To conclude, I want to reaffirm our commitment to quadrilateral cooperation between Australia, India, Japan, and the United States. As the respective leaders of our nations agreed when they met earlier this year, cooperation on critical technologies for the future is essential to ensure that innovation is consistent with a free, open, inclusive, and resilient Indo-Pacific. The Quad Critical and Emerging Technology Working Group is integral to advancing this work and delivering clear, positive outcomes that benefit all democracies. Today's forum is testimony to the working group's commitment to collaborating with industry to encourage telecommunications diversification. Together, our efforts will help identify approaches to build resilience and encourage new secure solutions in the telecommunications sector. Open RAN is one such potential option to encourage market diversification and open and interoperable networks in a way that makes business sense. As with all new technologies, it needs to be properly harnessed in order to bring benefits for all. I truly welcome this forum's discussions over the next 2 days and look forward to continued industry and government collaboration on exploring Open RAN and other promising technological solutions. This forum is a great first step in creating an environment of collaboration and shared ownership between our 4 nations and our 4 industrial bases. Our discussions over the next 2 days afford an opportunity to share lessons learned, align efforts, and identify new joint actions together based on our respective strengths. By working together through the Quad and beyond to other like-minded countries, we can address our shared challenges and protect and promote our core liberal democratic values. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Secretary Ablong, for those remarks. We will now move along to our first panel of the day, which is on Open RAN technical performance. And I will turn the floor over to my colleague from BSA, the Software Alliance, Henry Young, who is Director of Policy. Henry, over to you.
Thanks, Alex. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. At this point, I'd also like to invite the panelists for panel 1 to turn on their cameras and join. My name is Henry Young. I'm the Director of Policy of BSA, the Software Alliance. BSA is the leading advocate for the global enterprise software industry before governments and in the international marketplace. And today, you're going to hear some brief remarks from our 4 distinguished panelists from NTT Docomo and Altiostar, Telstar, and Radisys. And then we'll have time for some discussion about Open RAN's performance. Let me go ahead and just start our panel on Open RAN technical performance by passing the microphone to Naoki-san of NTT Docomo.
Thank you very much, Henry. Hello, everyone. I'm Naoki Tani from NTT Docomo. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'm a CTO, Chief Technology Officer of NTT Docomo, which is a Japanese leading mobile operator, communications operator. Also, I'm responsible for overall R&D division with approximately 1,000 R&D employees. And our R&D covers all aspects of mobile communications, such as radio, core network, services, clouds, and terminals. NTT Docomo launched our 5G commercial service March last year. 5G is expected to evolve significantly as the infrastructure for all industries to provide new added value and solve social issues. To meet these expectations, 5G must be capable of responding flexibly and quickly to the needs of various industries. For this purpose, open networks capable of combining various vendors and solutions are essential. To realize the open networks, in February 2018, 5 companies, including NTT Docomo, founded the O-RAN Alliance and has led the establishment of specifications. I myself currently serve as one of the board members. Based on the open interface established here, Docomo realized the world's first open RAN by combining different vendors since the start of the 5G service in March last year. Also, this multi-vendor connection based on open interfaces make it easy to deploy virtualized radio access network and intelligent systems. Open has already started and take off. It will further expand and accelerate on a global scale. Later, I will discuss in more detail the world, values, and opportunities realized by implementing Open RAN. Thank you very much.
And now we can head over to Arun.
Okay, Naoki-san, Nikos, Terry, and Henry, great to be here on this panel with all of you. It's a big privilege for us to be here. The last year has clearly showed us that broadband is in the center of how society is evolving. And for our 4 countries to be here on a panel like this is proof enough that O-RAN is going to play a very significant role in this evolution. From a Radisys perspective, our software-centric approach to Open 5G has found multiple resonating points across the world, both through our direct interactions and through our industrialization partners. The flexibility of software allows us and all of you operator customers to move down the path of virtualization to cloud-native microservices-based architecture in a highly flexible manner. It's also allowing many experimentations on multiple platforms once the software has been made stable, secure, and interoperable. And this kind of flexibility, Nikos and I shared some common paths in the past and have some history on what is closed. And when you look at something like what is possible now, how different it is from the past legacy implementations, if you would call it that. Also, what we are seeing is that operators are loving this capability where they're unpacking the product and are able to examine and understand the full nature of the products that are going into their network. And contrary to what some people would say that openness creates issues, you've got more eyes actually looking into how this product is packaged, inherently making it more secure. And that is a true big advantage from this approach. Operators in these 4 countries are going to play a huge role in how this shapes into the future. We have many active working relationships across these regions, and this is really exciting, and this is real, and I really look forward to participating in this panel with the rest of my fellow panelists. Thank you, Henry. Back to you.
Thank you. And now we can jump to Thierry at Altiostar.
Thank you. Good good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It's a privilege to be able to attend this event with such representation of governments, policymakers. Altiostar is extremely active in this new movement. We call it a movement because it's something which is not only needed for the industry, but also unstoppable. And there has been tremendous progress made over the last couple of years, even dealing with the pandemic, as we all have to deal with in our respective countries. But the time that has elapsed in the last 12 to 18 months, we see an acceleration. And why there is an acceleration for Open RAN? Open RAN is very much needed. We have been going from 1G to 2G to 5G and soon talking even more about the next G. And it's absolutely imperative that we have an industry structure which is much more solid. There is today an issue on the supply chain with not enough vendors. There's a concentration, not just how many vendors have left, there's a geographic concentration. And everyone knows that in any industry, if you want to really enjoy and create benefits in terms of not just cost savings, but to really having access to innovation, you need to have an open supply chain. You need to unleash the innovation. And we believe that the validation that has been happening already in the marketplace in terms of the market readiness of Open RAN is Open RAN the right architecture. I think there's no debate. I mean, who would like to have a debate about the fact that having an open architecture with open interfaces and interoperability is something that should be a mandate and not something that should be an option for discussion. I think we are at a point where the ecosystem also has developed tremendously. The beauty of Open RAN that it does enable a lot of companies to participate. In fact, it does not prevent the traditional vendors to participate. It's just for them also to embrace this need for openness and interoperability. But it does also create the opportunity for many new companies to participate. And there's nothing more powerful than innovation. And I think for many companies who are in the countries participating on this at this event, whatever you are from the US, from Europe, India, Japan, or Australia, there is a tremendous opportunity for participation of many companies that can now take advantage of an open platform. Because Open RAN is about opening up the network for others to develop application to add value. And the promise of 5G will not happen if we don't create an open platform, an industry open platform. So we really believe that what has happened in Japan with Rakuten, who made a very bold decision to be an early adopter for Open RAN, is helping the industry tremendously, because we have now the validation of deploying Open RAN at scale. I mean, we have today, between the macro, millimeter wave, massive MIMO, small cells, more than 100,000 radios connected to an Open RAN software. So I think this is something that, again, not just a benefit for us as a participant in this project, but also a tremendous benefit for the industry, not just for new entrants who have obviously an opportunity to access to this innovation, but also for existing operators with legacy technology, which obviously need to be able to start to insert Open RAN in their network and the time is now. The ecosystem is there. We are working with probably today more than 50 partners, and there has been already independent surveys about the quality, the performance of the network that everyone can have access to. So I think the reason not to adopt Open RAN are very much minimal. And there's always a challenge when you transition from one technology. This is probably more than technology transition. It's a new way of designing, managing, supporting, maintaining the network. But the benefits are such that the sooner the industry is going to embrace this at scale, the better it will be for all participants, whatever you are on the networks, operator side, on the vendor side, and I would say to the benefit of the consumers and the enterprise, which is going to be a tremendous opportunity in addition to the public networks.
Thank you. That's a really great start to this conversation. And now I want to go to Nikos at Telstra.
Thank you, Henry, and greetings to everybody listening in, and nice to see you, Arun, again. This is an exciting era, and Open RAN is, of course, something that the industry absolutely needs. Telstra, for those that don't know, is the largest operator in Australia with and we take pride in the innovation that we bring to the market. We are well known for being the early deployment carriers around the globe, and we have started deploying 5G for the past 2 years. And at the end of June of 2021, we have achieved 75% POPs covered in Australia with 5G already. That would make us one of the largest deployed networks globally, especially given the size of Australia. So from that perspective, we have been, of course, experimenting with O-RAN and trying to identify benefits and how do we deploy it in a mature, well-advanced network like ours. And of course, as you can imagine, the challenge, like Secretary Oblong mentioned before, is security is a big one. Supply chain resiliency, massive concern, sovereignty of data, top of mind. So with that as background, we are looking to the O-RAN ecosystem to develop and evolve to support not only the performance of the existing networks of the traditional net vendors, but also the features such as carrier aggregation, frequency, band availability, etc. Because I can tell you, in our network, we have the majority of our sites with 6 to 8 frequency bands deployed times 3 sectors, and you can't replace half of them or 1/3 of them. You have to replace all of them, and you have to aggregate most of them. Otherwise, you can't achieve the same performance. You can't deliver to our customers the same experience that they have today. So one of the things that we are discovering is that we need to drive the ecosystem of partners across the globe to create this feature richness that exists with the existing vendors and accelerate the availability of those in the O-RAN ecosystem. The other thing we have discovered, of course, is integration. Integration is something that's not easy, and you can see the emergence of new vendors that are willing to take on that space. Sometimes the telcos themselves will do this job. Sometimes new vendors will emerge. But the more vendors you have in order to create that ecosystem, that opens up to security concerns, even more supply chain worries, etc. So we as an industry have to come together and solve this problem. Finally, and given that it's the 4 countries that are speaking today, we are extremely interested in creating an ecosystem where, I'll speak on behalf of Australia in this case, we would like to be as self-reliant as possible. Replacing one country with another as the sole vendor supply does not change our supply problem. So having the ability to develop locally a lot of these components is extremely important. So I'm extremely happy that Secretary Oblong mentioned the the 5G security lab and the 6G lab. So these are exciting developments. Henry, I'm going to stop there and looking forward to the discussion between the panelists.
Great, thank you. And thanks everyone for your opening remarks. Let's maybe just start at the beginning. And one thing that jumped out at me was that Thierry mentioned the word readiness, spoke about the readiness of Open RAN. I think readiness is an important word for a panel on technical capabilities. So I'm wondering if any of you can share some information about a project your company is involved in or completed and some lessons you learned about the readiness of Open RAN.
Yeah, I can go first, and then of course others can chime in. We have either directly or through our industrialization partners have been involved in many different projects, Henry, and the scale of what we've been involved in ranges from indoor coverage in actually what Nico's mentioned, an FDD band where 4G, 5G coexistence had to be solved, ranging all the way to macro deployments and also advanced scaling experiments that we're doing with a large tier 1 operator who says, look, to have cloud native services is interesting. Can we really test how these data plane and the control plane can independently scale and what benefits we get from that? Let's not just talk about it, let's go actually do this. And in the process, we've also integrated with approximately a dozen ORU vendors to really make sure that this open ecosystem is actually active and working. And you talked about two things. One is what have we seen in terms of performance? And the second one is lessons learned, right? So in terms of performance, what we see is that the inherently flexible nature of software and the combination of underlying compute platform really drives the ultimate performance that you can see on end user devices. So for example, our software has been tuned down to work with as few as 2 cores from one of the compute platform manufacturers. And at the same time, it is also scaled up to work on a 40 core server. So what you are able to experience from a UV perspective is very much dependent on what kind of underlying compute platform you're able to go with. And this then deals to not just throughput, but also the number of users for TTI, for example, and everything else that is related to it. So in the best of cases, on a very reasonable platform for outdoor deployment, where it is similar to products that are available from other OEMs that have been involved out there, we have been able to achieve multi-gigabit throughput down to commercial UVs in the system. More work is going on with carrier aggregation and across multiple frequency bands as well to ensure that we can bring this forward. A big flexibility that we've also seen and a key learning is the ability to move from FR2 to FR1 and have software as common as possible so that you can really start to look at a one software layer across multiple frequency bands and not look at siloed deployments for every band. So that was one key learning for us to make sure that the software is transparent across multiple frequency bands. And then the other thing is, at least in this stage, to have very, very good cooperation with your compute platform manufacturer and really treat this as a very sound technology partnership. And the optimizations that you can do when you bring 2 talent pools together, instead of saying, I have all the talent, I think for us, it has actually been liberating because we really get the best of minds from a software perspective and a compute platform perspective to say, hey, let's tune this platform for peak performance. And that is a key lesson for us that operators will continue to benefit from as we move forward.
Thanks. Any other thoughts on lessons learned from the projects you've been working on already?
Okay, so may I share our experience? Okay.
Yes, please.
Yes, as I mentioned before, Assocham started our 5G services March last year, and which is fully compliant with ORAN Alliance. Through the combination, so we already utilizing the multi-vendor combination platform. Through the combination of multiple vendors, high speed and large capacity, which is one of the 5G features, has continued to evolve. Actually, 6 months, just only 6 months, 6 months after the service launch, we started millimeter wave services. Yes, had started. And also 3 months after from that time, sub-6 carrier aggregation with multiple vendors was also realized, thereby achieving the maximum downlink speed of 4.2 gigabit per second last year. In addition, such high-speed evolution by leveraging radio equipment from a variety of vendors tailored to regional characteristics, 5G has been deployed nationwide across 574 cities as of the end of March this year. Actually, now I can use Docomo 5G here too. So I'm attending today's webinar by utilizing 5G terminal. It's very clear, right? So as a result of expanding the lineup of ORAN compliant equipment to meet various needs, already 16 types of equipment are currently in operation. And also verification is underway to add 4 more types equipment from 2 new companies. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
Yeah. So, already in this very brief conversation, it's clear that ORAN it's moving, but nevertheless, we do see some stories in the popular media and trade press expressing doubt about ORAN, what its readiness, but also, its potential impact. And I was wondering if anyone has kind of thoughts to share about kind of skeptics on, I would say readiness, but also impact. Thierry, it looks like you might want to jump in.
Well, I will look at this as a good sign. If Open RAN was going to go on its own track with no reaction, of course it has. Open RAN was not invited, especially at this particular point of time where most vendors, and even as Nikos mentioned, operators have already started to deploy their first wave of 5G, leveraging something which has been proven and working very well. So when Open RAN has been introduced as even if it's much needed as a different new alternative, you will always see people who will be more cautious. You will people who will obviously be in a situation where if you have spent billions of dollars in R&D for a given generation of technology, this is not exactly easy to say, well, Open RAN is cool, I'm going to jump and stop what I'm doing. No, it's a bit more complex. We believe that there's already, for sure, a lot of operators who have evaluated, who wants definitely to make sure that this is the right thing for the evolution of their network. So we took a very big decision at Altiostar when we knew that 4G will be there for a long time, and that most networks will have to support 4G and 5G. And we have done a tremendous investment to, again, back to what Nico said, it's imperative that if any operator is going to deploy Open RAN, 4G and 5G, we need to ensure there is a service continuity, business continuity. If you are going to replace existing equipment, for whatever reason, untrusted equipment, or it's an evolution in order to support 5G, you need to make sure that you have this service continuity. And we probably, beside the effort we had to make to deploy in Japan, and Japan is a fantastic market for us. Everyone knows that there's no compromise with quality in Japan, and Naoki-san knows this very well. So for Altiostar to be deployed in Japan, we had to meet the requirements, and they are pretty stringent. So no compromise, and this is why, as a company, we are extremely focused on what we are good at, which is software. It's software, because this is where our added value, intellectual property, is centered. And what we have learned that in order to be ready, talking about market readiness, it is about 4G and 5G. We have a tremendous partner with us, which has been helping us, who has also made an investment in Telstra, Telefonica. And Telefonica is going to deploy in multiple countries, major markets in Europe and in South America. And the work that has been done is exactly to the point, say, to make sure that not just Telstra, but the whole solution, from the radios to the cloud platform to the servers, are going to be ready. And wherever they need a system integrator for the local deployment, they're also having the flexibility. And it's about question of choice. Today, you are obliged to do a system integration with the traditional vendor because no one else can deploy and support their technology. In Open RAN, there is a choice, and not everything is there, but we have demonstrated that you can support millimeter wave. You can be deployed in very dense urban environment, as we are. Obviously, Japan is a country very high density. We have also deployed massive MIMO, and there is more to come. Carrier aggregation, multiple frequency, support multiple frequency is extremely important. So all those things are very well known, and we are confident that the maturity of the technology is at the point where the level of confidence is going to be here. Plus, as it has been also mentioned, how do we insert not just the technology, but how do we, reskill the workplace, the workforce in some of the operators? It is a transition about, how do you implement CI/CD? It's a completely new way of operation. If there's one lesson learned in what we are doing with Rakuten in Japan about the combination of open interfaces, which is for the openness, interoperability, plus virtualization / containerization. The part which is really, really exciting us is how you can now do the automation, the simplification and the automation of the network. So the combination of all those attributes make the Open RAN solution extremely attractive. And it's a journey. And as I said, the sooner we can start with our ecosystem partners to help the operators with existing networks, that's the way we look at the adoption of Open RAN, now moving from greenfield to really going with operators with existing networks.
Great, thanks. I'd like to turn to Nikos now, and Nikos, I'd like you to imagine that we all come back together a year from now, ideally in person. Wouldn't that be great? And you're asked to give, the keynote address about, what would you title that? Where do you think Open RAN is going to be in a year?
I hope much progress from where we are today, Henry. I'll combine the previous question and this question, if you permit me.
Yeah.
I am a greenfield operator, and if I were to speculate, I should be the biggest skeptic about ORAN, because if you can't replace an existing, already deployed multi-band network, then ORAN is not ready. So from my perspective, a year from now, I would love to stand up and say, hey, even a brownfield operator like ourselves, advanced in technology, advanced in deployment, we are ready to actually start deploying in our serious markets and not in sports like stadiums or campuses, etc. ORAN. That would be a fantastic achievement. Ultimately, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when for all operators. So I think some of us that would like to be at the forefront of technology will go first. It's just having the right moment to do this in a big way in our major markets. That's when the technology has arrived. So next year, I should be excited to say we're ready to go.
So I think with this, we're actually about at time. I do want to thank each of our panelists for sharing their expertise and their experience. I know we could talk about this for a long time. I look forward actually to continuing this conversation as we go forward. And with that, I will send it back to Alex.
All right. Thanks very much. Good to see you all.
Thanks so much, Henry, and thanks so much to all four of our panelists there. We're now going to turn to a discussion with industry CEOs from NEC, Mavenir, and Tech Mahindra. Moderating that discussion will be P. Balaji, Chairman of the National Council on Digital Communications at our industry partner, Assocham, India. Balaji, over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Alex, for this. It's indeed a privilege to have such an illustrious panel of industry leaders and pioneers. You all know them. We have Mr. C.P. Gurnani, CEO and Managing Director of Tech Mahindra. We have Mr. Pradeep Kohli, President and CEO of Mavenir. Morito-san, President and CEO of NEC Corporation. We also have Manish Mangal, who's the President of Networks for Tech Mahindra. The reason he's there is that there's some personal emergency that CP has to attend to. So he just wanted to say hello and maybe make a couple of remarks before he hands it over to Manish. So CP, over to you for. Yeah. You are on mute, CP. We can't hear you. It's the button right on the top.
Yeah, now it's done. Good morning, good evening. Thank you again, Balaji, for your understanding. Pradeep, I know we are due to spend a lot more time together, but I joined a little earlier and I had a chance to listen in to the other panelists from NEC, from Telstra, Nikos particularly, and my old friend Thierry from Altiostar. I can only say is that Pradeep and I have spent a lot of time, drawing what I would say pencil drawings on the restaurant's very handy tissue paper.
That's true.
And they come in because both he and I used to dream together many years ago about the new digital era and what the new digital era means to telcos. Will we ever go into the software-defined networks? Will a major telco realize that there is 30 to 40% savings in an open RAN, virtualized RAN, or a cloud RAN? Will we be able to look at a different paradigm of CapEx and OpEx as we go along? And what we are now seeing is, I mean, many of you have noticed Indian government decided to come up with a bid where they decided that they would want software-defined networks. So I think all I am saying is that thanks to the investment some of us have made in setting up labs, setting up those systems which are definitely challenging the physical RAN, the proprietary systems, the proprietary radios, or the proprietary BBU software. I think the time for Open RAN is now. I mean, if Reliance were to set up their network de novo today, they wouldn't have spent $23 billion to set up a telco. They probably would have spent 40% lesser. And I have requested my colleague Manish to represent all of us. My apologies to the other panelists. I was looking forward to this discussion, but owing to certain personal urgency, I begged leave from Balaji, and thank you, Balaji, for being considerate. I'm really obliged.
Thank you so much, CP. Understand personal issues are personal issues. We have to deal with such situations. Thank you very much, CP, for joining in and for deputing your senior colleague, Manish, to be on the panel. Indeed, the advantage that we have of such an illustrious panel is that they can share their experiences and how they've been actually moving this whole agenda of Open RAN and open network architecture forward. So I will just do the easy task of asking some open questions that will allow them to share their perspectives. And so my first question, and maybe I'll start with Morito-san yourself, and then the same question can go to Pardeep and then to Manish. There is so much excitement now on the Open RAN deployments. Alex talked about 35 countries. That's a big, big number. So there's so much excitement around the globe. And your organizations under your leadership have obviously made a lot of investments. You've actually done a lot of early discussions with with the operator partners, other customers, also with the supply chain to make sure that this actually becomes a reality. So it would be wonderful if each of you could share your experiences on what those kind of early learnings have been, the early experiences have been, something that you'd like to share as best practices that your organization has done in this journey. And so starting with you, Morita-san first, and then we'll move on to Pardeep and to Manish after that.
Okay, thank you. And good evening, everyone. And I'm so glad to have this type of conversations and for the new era. And as you said, actually, the Open RAN is going to be a real things. And NEC and we are working on the various Open RAN related projects around the world at the commercial side as well as the government side. And NEC has deployed the world's first 5G commercial Open RAN. That's a real one for NTT Docomo in 2020, and deployed through cloud-native Open RAN. It's a kind of greenfield type of the Open RAN initiatives for Rakuten in 2020, the same year. And this year, as you probably heard, that we are appointed as a key partner for Vodafone UK and their Open RAN commercial deployment. And also, next week, we jointly announced that we are engaged in live Open RAN massive MIMO deployment for Deutsche Telekom's O-RAN town initiatives, right? So a lot of the commercial initiatives are going on. And of course, we have to overcome and several real issues such as the TCO and open interoperability issues and the throughput issues and so on. But I think that those things will be resolved over the time. I think that's a matter of time. And on the government side, we are working with the UK government and the Neutral RAN program to address social connectivity issues. I think this is a very helpful for us too, to get the captured like Vodafone UK project. And the UK government gave us the field for us to test like interoperabilities in early phases, so that we are focusing on as a vendors and also the operators focusing on like a commercial type of the testing. And so it's a very much good kind of a complementary type of the collaborations between the commercial and the government. And also there are several concerns about integration issues because of the open natures. NEC is not only offering RU for our RAN system, but also RAN integration, cloud native mobile core, and RIC and BSS, OSS. That means we could be offering the end-to-end network solutions. And I think we are working with the Telefonica and for 4G Open RAN and as system integrators. So I think the integration is one of the issues we are facing, but I think as a matter of the fact, we are tackling these things and solving issues. So we are working together to make things real.
you so much, Morita-san. That's a very good opening intervention on the way you're going about on the technology side, and as well as some of the challenges and the system integration part. That's very enlightening. May I move over to you, Pradeep? And I think CP was talking about the early days and how you and he were discussing many interesting ideas on making this a reality. So it'd be absolutely wonderful to hear how that early part of the journey was and how you see it now that it's starting to get a lot of traction.
Yeah, so as you know, right, Mavenir, we have been a software company. We have been doing the virtualization aspect for all different parts of the network. Of course, we got into the radio space about 5 years ago, but before that, even in the core, the company started in 2005. So at that time, even the core network, just to do a voice call, people were building proprietary systems. Like in fact, Ericsson Nokia was building cards, physical cards, to actually do a voice call. So we actually started with taking just the software running on SunSpark servers or Dell servers and making voice calls in a 2G 3G network, right? And then of course with the time evolving, the next layer was the packet core. So we have actually the virtualization of the packet core. And then about 5 years ago, we said, okay, now the compute power has reached a general purpose silicon that you can actually do even radio layer to a large extent on an open silicon and open hardware. So that's where we have now invested a lot of our effort over the last 5 years. So it's very interesting, right? So if you look at in the last 2-3 years, a lot of enterprise work has already moved to the cloud, right? So a lot of people who were doing on-prem software, like for their payroll or accounting and everything else, have moved it to the cloud environment. And then actually it's very simple. A lot of people actually in the IT department don't build now physical servers. So if you view an operator as a big enterprise, they are going to go through the same journey which every other enterprise has gone through. That how do you actually take the whole stack and virtualize it and either run it on a private cloud or a public cloud. So that's where having a software layer which can run in a multiple environment becomes very important. So as you know, we announced with Dish that they are building 5G network in US, and they are doing it on a private network, but they also announced a relationship with Amazon. So our software today, like the CUDU or Open RAN software, the packet core, can run not only on the private network or private cloud network, but also on the public cloud as well. And so that's where I view that, if you think about in the past, right, the amount of R&D which the companies like Ericsson, Nokia were spending, a lot of that was going towards building ASICs or building hardware. Now the pace at which the compute industry is going, like the amount of money which Nvidia spends or Intel spends or AMD spends, and how fast you can execute the payload, there is really no competition left. So unless we adopt the whole telecom software to run on the same compute platform which the whole world is running on, we will be lagging behind in the telecom industry, right? So it's not, to me, it's not just whoever brings it to, okay, it's Open RAN and it's small interfaces. It's actually really much bigger problem than that, because the amount of money which Nvidia spends or AMD spends in the R&D to build silicon and how fast they can do this, and similarly power reduction, right? I mean, one of the key aspects of like as previous discussion, I was listening a little bit. Now the carriers have multiple bands on the same site. All of them are consuming a lot of power, right? So now Ericsson, Nokia, they don't pay those bills themselves, right? And right, so they design the hardware, which is okay, maybe it gives you 10% benefit, but at the end, an operator pays those bills of electricity and everything else. Versus when you look at Amazon and Google and all those companies, if they reduce the cost of running those networks, that immediately hits their margin and their bottom line. So the amount of money they are putting in to actually reduce the power, how much can you do, how do you allocate the resources, how do you optimally use those resources, there's no way any operator in the world can invest that kind of money, right? So that's where we view that, okay, now the future has to be adopt all the innovation which is happening beyond just the telecom industry and bring it to the telecom, so that way it takes the benefit for the whole industry.
Thank you so much, Pradeep. That's an interesting perspective, how to take the cross-industry learnings and scale advantage to benefit the telecom ecosystem as well as the customers. Manish, over to you. I know there's a lot of work that TechM has been doing also in this space. So maybe whether it's the Open RAN or open network architecture and your early experiences with different operators and governments, maybe you would like to talk about some of those and share with the audience.
Absolutely, Balaji. First of all, thank you so much, Morita-san, Pradeep. It's so good to see you and privileged to be on this panel with you. I think both what Morita-san and Pradeep said are right at the front and center of the problem statement. But I want to share just a couple of different perspectives that we have observed, which are become so critical. That Open RAN is not about technology anymore. It's really about fundamentally changing the way operators will be able to stay highly competitive and serve the needs of the customers going forward. There are 2 or 3 trends that we absolutely been watching, and it become very critical to address. Number one is just the cost of building and operating and maintaining a network has to constantly keep going down. There is no question about it. The amount of consumption of the data has only risen, and so the pressure on driving the cost is huge. The second part is really agility in bringing the innovation. The fundamental challenge for the mobile operator, as I see it, is that the time it takes from an incubation of an idea to the consumption by customer is a very long lead cycle. It typically takes 3 years. You go through the standard process, you go through the technology development, and you go through the initial trial successes. And by the time it actually gets into the field and the customers can use it, it's a very long lead cycle. And today's world and age, that really is not something that we can afford, because the innovation and the speed of the innovation has to get much faster. The third is the entire investment in 5G is really not about the speed and latency. The investment in 5G is really about changing the network as an experience network. And that's something that we have observed, that while 3G did the connectivity and 4G created an open ecosystem for the applications to come on board, 5G is really becoming about how do you deliver a variety of different experiences to the customer and turn that into a software-defined experience network. If you really want to make the network as an experience platform and build the agility of technology and the capability to come faster on it, the only way to do it is that by making that network a software network. And from an entire end-to-end life cycle, if you look at it, and what Pradeep mentioned is that core virtualization started 10 years, 15 years ago, where it actually became software centric and you could add features into the core a lot more faster. However, the RAN has always been lacked. Until the last couple of years, the ability to change features into the radio was just a long process. So to me, the Open RAN is fundamentally shifting the ability for the carriers to bring innovation to the customers at a very faster pace, while at the same time driving the cost of providing the service. From Tech Mahindra's perspective, there is one interesting thing that we found ourselves almost 3 years ago, which is when you open the ecosystem, you basically allow the supply chain to be disrupted. So a lot of new innovative players can come into the market with their niche technology, niche innovation. However, somebody still has to put it all together to be able to make it work from an end-to-end perspective, so that all the performances for the customers are managed. At the same time, there are no challenges in being able to manage the life cycle of the various components. And this is the reason why we started investment into an open disaggregated network almost 3 years ago. We attacked the Open RAN as the first area, and we experimented in terms of creation of different labs. So we started with the VNF Exchange Lab, and then we invented into a platform called NetOps.ai to really build the capabilities that puts a framework for integration where multiple components can come in together. So you could take a radio from one partner, you can take a CU from the other partner, DU from the other partner, and the core could be from other partner, but still all of them work seamlessly. And then what we realized was that it's also not about just putting it together to make it work. It's also to make it work and scale it to hundreds and thousands of the base stations as they get deployed. So hence, we basically took a fundamental shift in our approach of saying is the word traditional system integrator is not going to be able to do that. We need a software-defined system integration, which is really more continuous integration. So we changed ourselves as part of your question, Balaji, for investment. and said we are going to be the CI, not an SI, which will bring that ecosystem to continuously integrate these new functionalities and allow the integration framework to happen in a way that the new innovation can come in less than 6 months to the customer by the time somebody is incubating into the lab. So you can start with a CI/CD pipeline all the way from the vendor R&D labs to operator deployment and allow that to become seamless from incubation to operation. And that's the role that we are playing, and we are fully invested into that. And this is a technology trend that's here to stay for a long time.
Thank you so much. I think it's wonderful that each of you have brought out different facets while actually complementing each other in your responses. Maybe just moving the thing a little bit forward, as you see the evolution and the early stages have been overcome, now it's getting to more deployment on a scale. Are there some barriers that you see, either policy or regulatory or commercial or technology barriers that you see as challenges at the moment? Yeah, so Morita-san, if there are any challenges that you see to the acceleration? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and I totally agree with what Manish said about integration issues and the development issues. And also, I believe colleagues and comment about power of the software. But I think when we are sitting at the seat of operators, and they need something to be proven on the field, right? And that is a kind of a challenge we are facing right now. First one is concerns over CapEx and the TCO, and the concerns over system integrations for end-to-end networks, and the concerns over security issues, right? And I think here we need some sort of the collaborations between private sector and the government sectors, right? And also, I wanted to talk about this have to be multi-country and structures. So, for example, like we are kind of benefiting from the neutral run and the arrangement by UK government. But if that is like kind of adapted by various countries, and if we can pass through this like validations and the test, and then if that is also used for the other countries as well, and then I think that like burdens or hurdles for the operators or vendors to overcome is much easier, and probably like adoption of the new technology or the open run is accelerated pretty much. So I think this kind of initiatives and also collaborations among the 4 countries or more countries is a very much kind of appreciated, and that's kind of my opinions. And we have to work together and to make it happen.
Morita-san, very interesting. What you're saying is, if you do not have to keep replicating it in country after country, but you actually can do collaboration, then naturally it saves time and money, resources, and allows for mass adoption. No, excellent point. Pradeep, from your point of view, are there 1 or 2 barriers that you think, if removed, would actually accelerate this process and make this journey more seamless and faster?
No, as you know, Morita-san pointed out, right? So you know, if you look at the legacy technologies, they have huge scale. Versus here, we are just starting, like Rakuten is one example, or you know, Dish, and then Vodafone UK. So we're just starting in this whole journey. But good thing is a lot of hard work is already done. Like we have now feature parity, and we can, at least from the development side, you know, we're on a path so that there'll be not much difference left between a legacy software and the Open RAN software. But then the trick is, okay, you know, as previous chip panel, you also had every country has their own set of bands, and they need RUs for those bands. So you need actually the radios, and radios are hardware. That is not software, right? And that's where actually we are struggling the most, in the sense that getting the radios, and then there was all these supply chain issues where you can't say made in China doesn't work in a lot of places, and then of course every country wants to have their own program to build it in their local country. So all those issues are actually making problem a little bit more difficult, because finding the radios which work for a particular geography and is built in that geography is actually, and then there's no business case if there's no demand. So that means, operators have to sign up before people will build it, but that's not really happening, because they say, okay, when it's ready, I'll use it. But when I want it built in that country, and I want it open. So that means there's an investment needed ahead of time. And that's where, as Morita-san pointed out also, there's a role for the governments. If that's what the requirements are, that for example, in India, if the idea is, okay, it has to be made in India, then somebody has to sign up that once it's built, I'll use it. But if they say, okay, I don't know whether I'll use it or not, but if I want it, I want it made in India, then who has the design? In a lot of places that, of course, in certain areas we're investing and doing it, and we're partnering. So we are partnering with NEC in a lot of opportunities and with other partners. So wherever it makes sense to partner, we are partnering, but together we still need help, because in a lot of these countries, there are different bands, different configurations required. And unless there is either a government help or a determination by an operator that that's what I would do if somebody builds it, there's no business case to go build it, right? And that's where we have to kind of work through some of these issues. Yeah.
No, thank you. Those are practical but real issues to be worked, and I think by highlighting on it and focusing on it, you get more attention to it, and then they get addressed to take care of some of the commercial aspects also, like you said. So Morita-san talked about the technical challenges, the repetitiveness of tests. You're also talking about the practical issues of commercial, what comes, the chicken and egg situation, how to make sure that everything works together. No, excellent point. Manish, again, you guys have worked in different markets, different customers, with governments and so on. You're quite closely engaged. So anything that you'd like to talk about, potential barriers to be removed which will accelerate this journey?
Let me, I 100% agree with what Morita-san and Pradeep said. I will just add a couple of points on top of it. One is really the coexistence with the existing network. 99% of the networks are brownfield networks today. Our experience working in Japan with Rakuten on the greenfield was phenomenal in really, maturing the technology. Right, 2 years ago, if you had asked a question, what's the challenge? It was all about technically whether this will work or not, and I think it's been proven in Japan that yes, it does work, and it worked very well. And to Pradeep's point, the feature functionalities are now very much on par with anything. But the practical scalability of deployment of Open RAN globally requires it to coexist with the existing infrastructures. And the coexistence comes two underneath challenges. One is certainly from a business case perspective, where how do, as an operator, I redirect my investment into the Open RAN technology so that I still have the operating costs and capex costs that I can get out of it and the efficiency. However, if my existing infrastructure doesn't evolve towards it, am I really achieving the overall benefits of the Open RAN? But the journey has to start. So we see a lot of operators starting sort of a cap and grow model of, I'm going to stop my investment into the legacy technology and start with the Open RAN. And yes, over the period of 3 years, it will become a ubiquitous thing in the network. So coexistence, but technically it has to be solved as well as from a business perspective. The other thing that I'm also noticing, which is a much bigger problem, I believe, is for the industry, is really the overall skill sets to be able to maintain, operate, and really get this ecosystem fully ready. Whether it is from the development part, which is really what the panelists said earlier as well, which is the incentives that are coming in from the government are absolutely helping. But we have, as an industry, a tremendous work to do in creating the workforce that will actually turn a software-centric workforce in managing these kind of networks. Otherwise, it will not really scale to the point that we really want to scale. And the last point that I will say is that, to your point, we are working with a lot of operators and governments globally. And one of the things that CP also alluded in his note earlier is that in India, the government of India has come up with a mandate for Make in India, and that's a great incentive to encourage the ecosystem to exist, and a lot of homegrown innovations in each of the countries to come to the foray, because they need that kind of a support to be able to become as mainstream as we need that to be. So with that said, those are the three fundamental challenges that I would add.
Thank you, Manish. I think, again, very good and interesting thoughts that you've brought on the table. Maybe just a short intervention I might request from each of the panelists. I think this kind of a forum, a quad forum, with participation of industry and government and everybody else in the ecosystem, is there something that you would say that one or two things that you think that for the next 1 or 2 years, that's what this forum should focus a little bit more on from your point of view, from being a technology provider and an integrator both? So Morita-san, is there something that you'll say, if I want 1 or 2 things, here are the 1 or 2 things I want from a quad kind of collaboration?
Yeah, I think one good thing would be creating some sort of the places where we can share the knowledge of the operations and migrations and technologies and so on among the operators who has some plan to the shifting from the existing the technology to new technology. And so that I believe that they are having the same type of the issues and the problems to overcome. And right now, I think that some of the information's knowledge are kind of limited to the very small group of people. But I think most of the information can be shared and among those people who are willing to innovate and pursue and the new technologies and this open RAN systems. So that I think by using this type of quad, the open RAN forum, and we can discuss and sharing some knowledge and about adoptions of the open RAN is one of the good ideas.
Thank you so much, Morita-san. A forum to share ideas and knowledge, and also a place where we can do it as a lab or something like that. Great. Pradeep, you're one ask, if I may say, from a forum like this.
Yes, at least, what I see like over the last 2 years between then and now, it's not a now matter of if people will do it. It's like, okay, when they would do it, right? So what that means is that, okay, if you're not comfortable with it, they will say, okay, we'll do it in 2025. Right? And if somebody is comfortable, they'll say, okay, I'll do it next year. So I think that the trick is to get people actually more comfortable so that, I personally believe that the 5G will be the last technology where any proprietary silicon gets built. I don't see 6G will, and in fact, even Ericsson is saying that the 6G will be open RAN, right? So that means this is the last one where somebody will be building a proprietary chip. Right. So I think that's where we now need to help the operators that get comfortable with so that they can actually save their even 5G investments. So the way I would look at it is that if people start like in rollouts in government, I mean India, for example, won't really start until sometime in 2024 in a big way. Right. So if you're building a network in 2024, you should be thinking that you're building it for 6G. Right. And so you're not going to make this change again. And the trick is between now and end of next year, how do you get them comfortable that that's how they should go about it, right? And that's what we are trying to do as much as possible. But of course, as Morita-san pointed out, the more help from the this type of forums will be helpful.
Thank you so much. And the last word to you, Manish, before I hand it back to Alex.
Thanks, Balaji. I think Open RAN Coalition Forum is a fantastic platform. There are multiple platforms we do have in the industry. Some are very technical from a standard development perspective. Some are from an interoperability point of view. But I think that this particular forum is particularly interesting in the journey where the Open RAN as a technology is today. It becomes a platform for the countries to share best practices in terms of what they are doing on the government side, on the policy side, on the even the academia side and the industry side in promoting the Open RAN ecosystem within the country so that the best practices can be shared. And I honestly believe that this coalition can actually create a template that can be followed by the rest of the world. After these 4 countries have done this work, I think if everybody can just replicate that template to promote the Open RAN within their countries and make this as a mainstream ecosystem, that would be the dream that we would want to establish to this forum.
Thank you so much, Manish. And once more, on behalf of the organizers, I really thank Morita-san, Pradeep, and Manish for sharing some wonderful ideas with all of us on this day. We could have gone on forever, but unfortunately, time is of constraint given the time zones as well. So back to you, Alex, to take this forward. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Echo your thanks there to the panelists, Balaji, and the same to you for moderating a really enlightening discussion. We will move things along in the program now and invite Rajesh Pant, who is National Cybersecurity Coordinator for the Government of India within the Prime Minister's office, to take the stage and deliver his remarks. Mr. Pant, over to you.
Thank you, Alex, for having me here, and greetings of the day to all the participants of this public event in the Quad Open RAN Forum. Firstly, I'm very impressed with the large number of companies that have participated today in this event. And we heard some very exciting and knowledgeable discussions, including the last one, as also from our government representatives from 2 of our Quad partners so far. On all aspects, whether it is the technical performance or the industry CEOs. And one clear conclusion that emerges is that ORAN is here to stay. And all those who had doubts about compatibility and costing issues, I think need to dispel all their fears. And one example that we can think of is the EMI EMC standards that have today allowed globally equipment to interwork with each other based on the accreditation that has been done by the accredited labs. So if it can be done in EMI, EMC, I'm sure the interoperability aspect can be handled in the ORAN also. And the concept of the distribution unit and the centralized unit is making proprietary interfaces open. And basically, it is democratizing the networks. Furthermore, the security aspects in ORAN are based on the zero trust architecture. And as someone said in a previous seminar we were having, and I quote, he said that it's easier to find the cockroaches when the lights are on. As far as the Indian government stand is concerned, we welcome the proposal of the ORAN Forum, and we confirm that it is in keeping with the commitment made by our leaders on 12th of March this year to cooperate on the critical technologies of the future to ensure that innovation is consistent with a free, open, inclusive, and resilient Indo-Pacific. And recognizing the importance of secure and reliable telecom network infrastructure, we also welcome the opportunity for a discussion between our governments and industry on the development of a robust Open RAN ecosystem and the associated benefits it will provide to our economies. Now, India is fast-tracking its 5G deployment efforts and is aware of the open technologies and the global initiatives which has forced an intention to accelerate the delivery of products that support a common open architecture and standardized interfaces that are viewed as the foundation of next-generation wireless infrastructure, while ensuring a broad community of suppliers driven by innovation and open market competition. Indian telcos such as Bharti Airtel, Vodafone Idea, and Reliance Jio are increasingly looking to expand their telecom gear supplier options beyond the traditional equipment vendors by using the O-RAN technology. We also support the scoping of a sustained public-private dialogue on the Open RAN between our governments and industry, with the potential for participation from industry and governments from across the Indo-Pacific. This dialogue would further complement initiatives being processed under the Quad Critical and Emerging Technologies Working Group. Recently in India, we have conducted 2 events to promote the Open RAN in 5G. One was on 17th of June last month, where we conducted an Open RAN India event. And a little earlier, we had an India Plug Fest, which was hosted by Bharti Airtel, in which demonstrations from 10 companies were put together to showcase O-RAN compliant open front haul multi-vendor interworking, the ODU system validation, the O-RAN compliant X2 interface, and radio intelligent controller use cases compliant with O-RAN 1 and E2 interfaces for network performance optimization, combining machine learning and radio intelligence. So finally, we in the Government of India are absolutely clear that open and virtualized RANs are the future of mobile networks. We have also promoted Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat, as it is called in India, has also issued a directive for the trusted telecom products from trusted sources to address the supply chain issue. Finally, in view of our shared attributes as political democracies, market economies, and pluralistic societies, the Quad provides a strong case for cooperation in Open RAN. To that extent, I compliment the organizers of today's event and would like to sign off with 2 points of advice to my industry friends. Firstly, let us create a time-bound roadmap at the earliest, a point that was also discussed in the previous panel. And secondly, please ensure that security by design in the various components of Open RAN is implemented so that the mistakes of the past are not repeated. With that thought, thank you very much for giving me this honor, and I wish the event all success. Jai Hind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant General Pant, and as much as anything for the words of advice at the end, which will transition us neatly into Ms. Anne Neuberger's remarks and then into the panel on the security of Open RAN. We know it's outside of work hours where you are getting into the evening, so we appreciate you staying on to speak with us. We will turn now to Ms. Anne Neuberger, who is Deputy National Security Advisor for Cyber and Emerging Technologies at the National Security Council at the White House. Ms. Neuberger, the floor is yours.
Hi, good day to everybody. How are you? So thank you to Alex, and thank you to the Open RAN Policy Coalition, Quad partners, and most importantly as well, our industry representatives today. And a thank you to the government of Japan for leading the 5G workstream under the Quad as well. I know the next panel will focus on the security characteristics of Open RAN, so I'd like to set the stage by sharing some context on the US perspective regarding 5G cybersecurity, including our perspective on Open RAN. First, bottom line up front, the Biden administration views 5G as a key national security and economic security issue. 5G is transformative and it will touch every aspect of our lives. It will underpin critical infrastructure such as transportation, electricity, distribution, and enable advances in new technologies such as artificial intelligence because of the large amount of data that can be collected, autonomous vehicles, and remote healthcare, and perhaps other applications we can't even think of. The reach and transformative power of 5G technology means the stakes for securing these networks are incredibly high. All countries will want to take advantage of the economic potential of 5G in a manner that promotes economic and national security while also preserving privacy. In order to enjoy the benefits of 5G, countries, from a national security perspective, and citizens, from a personal civil liberties and privacy perspective, need to be able to trust that 5G equipment and software won't introduce risks that threaten their national security, human security, or civil rights. Indeed, there's also a concern regarding potential disruption or degradation of service in times of crisis. So in short, 5G is the very description of critical infrastructure security. And governments, telecommunication operators, and all industry and network users have to prioritize security when building out their 5G networks. National measures must be crafted first to address security risks, but also to address non-technical risks. The Prague proposals and the EU cybersecurity toolbox outline some of those non-technical risks and highlight what are the most significant, including a system of government where a company is headquartered, and whether or not there is democratic checks and balances or an independent judiciary to prevent government overreach. In prior work roles, I was part of efforts to assess what was possible with regard to 5G security and whether it was possible to implement security at core places that would allow a country to still make decisions around untrusted suppliers. And what we concluded was that 5G was transformative in the way it was implemented, and as such, there is no way to implement secure 5G if there are untrusted suppliers within the foundational ecosystem. There's no secure ground one can stand on when there are untrusted suppliers in a network. And indeed, we all know that as much as this is a priority for each country, communications networks don't stop at a country's border. Securing global data flows and communications can only be achieved through a global approach of like-minded nations. The US is committed, as such, to work with our allies and partners on the importance of interoperable, reliable, and secure telecommunications and infrastructure. In order for us to realize the amazing transformative benefits of 5G, which we all want and need for our countries and our citizens, we have to have trustworthy options when selecting vendors to develop and deploy wireless infrastructure. Today, a state of limited competition in the telecommunications infrastructure not only can reduce supply chain resilience, but it also contributes to higher prices for operators and consumers, and it increases the risks of market distorting forces. That's why the President, in his recent executive order on competition, which he signed earlier this month in July, highlighted Open RAN as a key way to introduce competition and to really, in the telecommunications sector. Open, interoperable approaches like Open RAN have the potential to increase secure and trustworthy suppliers in the telecommunications market. Because by expanding the range of telecommunication solutions available, Open RAN will allow operators to choose the best solution to meet their unique network needs. It'll foster more innovation across the telecommunications ecosystem. So we wholeheartedly support increasing vendor diversity and increasing competition. However, to be clear, there are trustworthy incumbents in the ecosystem today that can and should be part of a more diverse and secure supply chain. Before moving on, allow me to share a few thoughts on the technical security dimensions of Open RAN. Open RAN offers some really interesting potential benefits for cybersecurity. For example, Open RAN can enhance and improve operators' visibility into the functioning of their networks, including control points, and can provide checks and balances on any anomalous activity. This visibility will strengthen operators' ability to audit and look into malicious activity, contrasting networks today which are built upon black boxes, proprietary hardware and software, which only the equipment vendor has meaningful visibility into, which drives both cost and, as I said, meaningfully cybersecurity. It's very difficult, as operators know, to secure a network if they don't have an understanding of what's going on in the black box. So today's event is very significant. It offers important opportunities for government and industry to constructively engage on the importance of 5G security and of building security into the Open RAN networks from the outset, And we all know that building networks, building security in by design is the least expensive and most effective way to have guaranteed security. So governments and industry can and should work together to ensure that Open RAN includes security by design through that robust engagement. And I was really excited to see that the next topic following my talk is about secure Open RAN. Truly appreciate that topic, and a thank you to all the participants in it. So to recap, the United States is very supportive of increased vendor diversity and approaches that foster, because they represent a means to promote the values of security, resilience, competition, and innovation. Values that I know everybody here at this forum shares. I want to be clear that the US is not seeking to choose market champions or dictate which technology solutions any operator or firm should use. Our goal is to increase vendor diversity globally, and we're unwavering in that commitment to industry-led solutions and free market competition. I should also underscore that governments are responsible for ensuring national security and should continue to put in place restrictions on high-risk, untrustworthy vendors for both traditional and Open RAN deployments. These are objectives we share with like-minded governments, including our Quad partners and global allies, and we welcome collaboration to ensure our shared goals for 5G, the future of the internet, the future of critical infrastructure in all of our countries. So I will conclude by highlighting and really recognizing the role of the Quad in 5G security and innovation. And I want to thank each of the government members of the Quad, Australia, Japan, India, and the United States, for their commitment to trustworthy networks and diversification. We all share the common goals of secure networks, economically viable networks, and innovation. Yet, with all of our focus on that in government, no one understands the technical and security dimensions of Open RAN better than the industry leaders who are building and deploying these technologies. So this forum is a crucial opportunity for governments and industry to talk together and build out those goals and build out our policy priorities and perspectives. We truly value your insights across the private sector and will strive to incorporate them into the Quad's work and into our collaboration with other partners. I'm just as eager as you all are to get to the really interesting and insightful discussions following. So I look forward to that agenda. I thank you all for your time today, and I'm truly excited, not only by the collaboration the Quad represents for 4 key governments known for their technological expertise and the talent in our countries, but also for the partnership between government and private sector. The magic of that partnership enables innovation, economic strength, and all of our national security today and tomorrow. Thank you, and all the best.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ms. Neuberger, for those comments and for taking the time to participate today. I know how busy at a time it has been for you and your team over recent months, so we do appreciate that. And if I'm right, I think national security memo was even released whilst we were in the middle of the event. So thank you so much for the insightful remarks, and please do stay on to listen to the next panel on the security of Open RAN.
Thank you very much, Alex. And as you noted, the National Security Memorandum was written about critical infrastructure security. So you can see that commitment there, and we look forward to sharing further details with others. Thank you again, Alex.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. I will now invite our panel for the security of Open RAN to please turn on your cameras and microphones. And I will turn the floor over to Mr. Sean Heather, who is Senior Vice President for International Regulatory Affairs at the US Chamber of Commerce. Sean, the floor is yours.
Well, good morning, afternoon, evening to all. And Alex, it's great to see you and be with you. As some may know, Alex is a former colleague of ours here at the US Chamber, and the Chamber is pleased to be with BSA and others who are putting this program on today. This next session, as has been previewed already, is really focused on 5G network security. As networks are deployed and utilized, it is essential that we emphasize the security of the connections, devices, and applications. But ultimately, security and resilience will only be accomplished in partnership between government and industry. Open RAN has an important part to play in the 5G conversation and the future of telecommunication networks, and we have a top-notch panel here to discuss Open RAN's contributions to network security. I'm pleased to have with us today Sean Hockel, who is Vice President for 5G Security at Microsoft, Tariq Amin, who is the Chief Technology Officer of Rakuten Mobile, Samit Dewan, who is President of VMware, and Yasuo Tawara, who's Director General of the Government or of the Global Strategy Bureau of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications with the Government of Japan. DG Tawara, let me start with you. Japan was an early mover on the push for diversification, interoperability, and 5G security. Can you walk us through how the government of Japan sees the importance of 5G networks in terms of security and some of the policies that you put in place to incentivize security and interoperability?
Mr. Tawara, I think you might be muted.
Yes. Oh, okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. MIC recognized the importance of ensuring security in telecommunication networks. I would like to explain our policy to ensure the security in 5G networks in Japan. MIC takes three-pillar approach to ensure the security of 5G networks. First pillar is to establish technical verification to identify vulnerabilities in 5G networks. Second one is facilitate information sharing of vulnerability of 5G networks in the private sector. The third, MIC combined regulation and promotion to provide the appropriate incentive structure to mobile operators. I'll briefly explain details of these three strategies. From 2019, MIC started a 3 years project to develop technical verification method for vulnerabilities in 5G networks with operators, vendors, and NICT. In this project, we are trying to formulate the guidance document for the security of 5G networks. This year, the last year of the project, and MIC will announce the final version of the guidance in the next spring. In the final version, we are looking forward to mentioning risks across a wide range of topics, including new technologies that are characteristics of 5G networks, such as network virtualization, network slicing, mobile edge computing, as well as migration from non-standalone to standalone, connection of nationwide 5G and private 5G, increase of standardized interface by the all-round technologies, etc. We hope to clarify the issue that the solution about security of 5G networks through these considerations. Next, I'll talk about information sharing in the private sectors. Various non-telecom companies are expected to introduce private 5G systems. These new companies may not have sufficient knowledge and experience on secure operation of mobile networks. So, in Japan, ICT Isaac Japan launched the 5G Security Steering Group to provide support to those non-telecom private 5G operators. The group gathers and shares 5G security information and best practices with major mobile network operators and private 5G operators. Thirdly, I'll talk about security measures with regulation. We urged mobile network operators to improve cybersecurity by requiring them to implement adequate cybersecurity measures, including measures against supply chain risk as a condition to obtain the approval of 5G establishment plan. In addition to the regulatory approaches to security measures, MIC has put in place promotion measures by establishing tax break schemes last year aimed at supporting the introduction of 5G. This scheme imposed requirements of security, trustworthiness, and openness such as ORAN. MIC is engaged in a range of efforts to promote 5G, and we will continue working with other countries, private public actors to effectively promote 5G development. This is the end of my present explanation. I believe today's discussion will be an important opportunity to promote open, secure, and trustworthy 5G network. I look forward to hear your thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Director General Tawara. As we move forward, I've got a few questions that I'll direct to some of our industry, but I invite all of the panelists to jump in and add their comments in the time that we have. But let me start with you, Sean, at Microsoft. When we look at network infrastructure landscapes and the decision by certain governments to exclude high-risk vendors, we're left with a very limited pool of providers for traditional RAN architectures. What risks are associated with a narrow vendor pool, and conversely, why is a diverse vendor pool something that we should seek from a security perspective?
Well, the way I look at it is if you look at all of the excitement around 5G, and I think it came in both the opening remarks from the U.S. government and the Japanese government, people are excited about all of the new use cases, opportunities to create new content forms on the consumer side, the opportunity to create these new integrated supply chain, the application of AI and ML to a variety of industries out there right now, which means that the scope of what you're trying to cover with this technology is going to radically increase. So the question is can you do that with a relatively closed ecosystem with a narrow set of suppliers who don't have domain expertise in all these new areas, or are you better served by an open and interoperable set of components that then can be meaningfully integrated with other or external intellectual property? And I think it's pretty safe to say that the experience in other industries and other parts of technology where this has occurred is that diverse ecosystem where you can bring in folks that are highly specialized in a particularly narrow area of that technology application, and then integrate it into part of a greater whole, has been a much more effective way of solving that problem. So if you accept that sort of many of the cases and many of the power of 5G is this much more integrated end-to-end capability, we talk about network slicing, we talk about automation across all of the elements. If you're going to do that, opening up standardized interoperable interfaces that work well between suppliers are going to be the key to executing on that. And so if you don't have that, you're then stuck relying on a single, a relatively restricted set of vendors who may not have necessarily the expertise in some of these new areas, and certainly they will not have, they won't have the lock on the innovation you're trying to create across that successfully. So as a result, RAN traditionally has been a relatively sort of narrow island of functionality, and that's not the vision for way a lot of folks are seeing RAN deployed and the use cases deployed across 5G. So to be successful, the open interoperable interfaces and the ability to bring in innovation from various suppliers is super important. I've also run a cybersecurity practice at a telco in the past, and know that there's a very, very diverse array of security technologies that are out there that are not the purview of any one company. In fact, part of the importance here is, is that cybersecurity threats evolve relatively rapidly. So as fast as the bad guys can innovate, we want to see the good guys innovate, and be able to bring that innovation into the supply chain and into the RAN ecosystem quickly, so you're protected against an evolving set of threats. And without those, without a lot of the stuff that's being done here with the work that's being done in the Open RAN coalition, and then there's obviously the Open RAN standards and Open RAN frameworks that are out there, that kind of innovation isn't going to happen. And that, I think, probably would not be a positive thing.
Anybody else want to comment on that before we move on?
Yeah, good morning, good day, everyone. This is Sumit Tuwan from VMware. Yeah, I agree with you, Sean. I think the promise of 5G is to bring tremendous innovation where just so you can just truly leverage the power of the speed of the network that 5G brings. And that's only possible with in open architecture, different than what we have done in the past. And the good news is the technologies are there, and I think there is this approach that it will actually, with that approach, you will not have fewer players in the ecosystem. Actually, it will increase the number of players in the ecosystem just because the openness of any architecture automatically does that. You'll automatically start seeing many more players providing infrastructure, security, and improvements in obviously all the applications as we know, which will make the entire network better. So I completely agree with it. And Tawara-san, the way you are thinking about how you can provide some kind of a guidance framework and regulations for providing security sounded really good in terms of a framework for adopting an open architecture, but with the appropriate security.
Tariq, let's do a little compare and contrast based off of what we just heard. As you know, we have an existing architecture in the traditional RAN sense. We're talking here today about what open RAN networks look like, and obviously we're talking about bringing a lot more vendors to the table. There's a little bit of apple and oranges comparison between the two systems. Can you tee up some of the similarities and difference between them in terms of how they impact security, kind of building on what others have said?
So good evening from Japan. So let me just start by just giving context to Rakuten journey on how we reached the conclusion and the decision to build our Open RAN platform network and deploy it in Japan. In 2018, Sean, we had a choice to build a network that looks the same or disrupt, innovate, and build a network that's built on open standards, open architecture, unified cloud, autonomy in the DNA of this network, and we've done all of this largely to disrupt the cost, economic, and the vendor lock-in that existed, especially around Open RAN. And in 2018, frankly speaking, it wasn't something that you could go to an OEM and say, please, I would like to deploy this network. It was quite a bit of complex task to do, but we believe this is something that was too critical for Japan, and it was too critical for the industry as a whole to drive this innovation around Open RAN and also the adoption of cloud across all telco workloads. And one of the key areas for us that we wanted to participate in, especially when we think about security, we don't think of security as just a single function in validating whether it is a software architecture, but we also wanted to participate in the hardware supply chain decision-making. To my knowledge, we were one of the only few operators that wanted to understand where the platforms and the components are made, where they come from. And this was an interesting discovery, and the discovery that led us to really decide the choices of manufacturing, the choices of vendors and component vendors that provide this mission critical infrastructure, the capability that we need to harden it and secure it. In fact, for our 5G massive MIMO product, I clearly remember I met with NEC and its leadership team, and we had a very open debate about an open bill of material pricing structure discussion in which both of us agreed on component vendor choices, but we also agreed that the product must get manufactured in Japan to deliver on the security requirements that this network needs. And then the story got a bit better. When the black boxes disappeared, we discovered quickly that our ability to harden and secure this infrastructure was just remarkable. And in terms of what we were able to drive in automation to apply security apparatus that I frankly don't believe current networks could deliver without evolving the architecture. And let me give you specific examples on this. One is whether you look at applying principles of completely zero trust. And if you are in my shoes, you have to be paranoid about security. That's my job every day. It's a national security, and a national infrastructure like a Rakuten Mobile is running requires quite a bit of hardening in its software architecture. So we've applied significant processes to address policies and governance, defining who has access policies and standard applicable to all personnel in our network. Access management for user, applying in every single component completely, whether it's our BNFs or CNFs, user access control and multi-factor authentication enablement. The beauty with software now discovered networks access and segmentation. So when your interfaces are open, you're able to do just remarkable things. And one small thing that we have done that was really interesting is we've applied private security infrastructure certificate on every component of the radio access network. So when we think about, are we hardened, are we secure? I say absolutely yes. We have clear visibility. And our continuous monitoring and apparatus that we have built in, our vault for managing user ID and passwords, and fraud management detection, we think now we have reached a stage that I will tell you, it will never be perfect. But I think the path towards the future in which networks are open, in which networks are not built on proprietary hardware, in which networks are delivered on cloud and deliver on true elasticity and security in the fabric of both software and supply chain, I think Rakuten Mobile has really become, in my view, an example of what is the art of possible if you open your mind and you really approach this ecosystem. Lastly, to Sumit and Sean's view, when we look at the suppliers, I have to tell you, the amount of diversifications that we have seen in people that wanted to participate in building Rakuten Mobile infrastructure was just remarkable. And when we talked with all of them, they said, Tarek, we've never had any person that would give us a breakthrough that we need. And so if you look at our suppliers, they mostly come from Japan, United States, and Korea as the three key areas that participated in building this network. With over 28,000 eNode Bs that are fully open, Rakuten has been able to build a network from scratch in less than 2 years. To my knowledge, this is something that hasn't happened, and this is the benefit of the architecture, the disaggregation, and the cloud benefit that such a platform could provide. And we've been very open on our engagement. I think I want to really credit and give MIC lots of credit for supporting, endorsing, and providing lots of guidance for Rakuten Mobile in terms of how we need to evolve to maintain quality as well as disruption on pricing and the other things that we brought to Japan.
Director General, do you want to add anything on the back end, given the high praise for the relationship Rakuten has had with MIC and getting this network up and running as quickly as it has, and showing the world, quite frankly, what's possible and achievable? Tawara-san, do you want to add something here? No? If not, we'll move along. Go ahead, sir.
So we will support the Rakuten's activities to introduce Open RAN system, ORAN system, and the virtualization. So we will make the guidance taking into the on the virtualization or ORAN systems in next spring. So anyway, we would like to cooperate with other operators, carriers, to introduce open RAN systems into Japanese market. So anyway, we support Tarek Amin's presentation.
Hey, Sean, before we jump on, just really quick, I mean, you could spend a whole 3 hours unpacking all the value Tariq just shared. This is, as you think through what they've done at Rakuten and the way that they've set up a zero trust architecture is critical to this whole, it's core to this whole discussion, right? The short answer is the traditional moat and castle approach to building solutions is ineffective. You have to assume you will be breached, not if you're going to be breached. And unless you have the software tools to both isolate the impact of breaches, unless you have the software tooling and the automation necessary to respond to them, and more importantly, even just detect them, you're not going to get anywhere. And I think what Tariq just shared is just fundamental to all of the things that we're going to talk about today, because it's that level of automation, isolation, and the zero trust security principles that are core to the 5G security discussion. And I think that the Rakuten's take a real leadership position there, and I applaud it. And it's important that people understand and see what they've done, because it's the template for the way that hopefully a lot of these solutions come out.
We've obviously talked a lot about why O-RAN makes sense. All of us here on this session are committed to bringing O-RAN into the market in ways going forward that have only been done in kind of test beds. But there are critics out there who are kind of married to the traditional approach to the way in which RAN architectures are done. And want to at least take a few moments here to kind of try to answer some of the top criticisms that are often leveled in these O-RAN conversations. One I often hear is this issue of network visibility. That it has already been mentioned that the existing system has a black box associated with a limited number of vendors and the ability to kind of see into that black box. But with bringing all these other competitors into the space and bringing lots of other applications and the like, are we not just kind of creating a bunch of mini new black boxes? That is one of the criticisms, at least I've heard, around network visibility. How would the panel respond to folks who make that argument?
Maybe I love this comment about criticism. I would tell you, we have taken enough of it. I think in the last 3 years, I clearly recall from 2018 when we decided and picked companies that were not necessarily what you would classify as large companies. So picking Altiostar for Open RAN at the time was considered to be extremely unorthodox, just largely because of the size of the company. And we always, in telecom, put ourselves into this constraint that if you evolve outside of a predefined box, you're taking risks that are not acceptable. And everybody agreed on the benefits, by the way, Sean, and everybody recognized that nobody would argue the benefits that cloud would deliver. And the classic example of this, if you look at public cloud companies in general, I mean, they're hosting voice video messaging applications for decades, but they're hosting it in a way that truly drives elasticity and resiliency to a level that you would not even see inside a telco operator, in my opinion. So, the people will come and give you their perspective, frankly speaking, about pros and cons, but the one value that nobody could argue about is that we are living in a software world. We're living in a world that is definitely dominated by the advantages that cloud could bring. We're living in a world in which AI and ML is going to take a pretty big front and stage and center to what we do every day in our business. So I would say ultimately, as Rakuten, our job was to prove that we could build a resilient network, a highly available network. And believe me, for people that don't know Japan, this country is quality obsessed. If I have one drop call, I assure you my boss will be calling me every day. So we had many companies as independent benchmarking companies coming to Japan to study the quality and performance of Rakuten network. And 3 of them agreed that we are in the top 10 mobile operator networks in terms of performance and quality. So that to me is a big check mark that the architecture works well, but I would tell you that we are still scratching the surface of what is possible, largely because the software architecture and the software fabric allows us to do unbelievable number of software upgrades that are not possible with traditional solution. It just doesn't work. We do almost every day, by the way, on radio, I have about 300 new releases that come daily. By the way, a radio software upgrade in other networks gets upgraded maybe every 6 months or 1 year. So the fact that we move into this new software world, to me, is I don't think it's a debatable issue anymore. And now it is the responsibility of the industry as a whole to really push the architecture, address the gaps, And but I think now we have a good story to tell, and it's a practical one and a large network that really materialized in Japan, and I'm sure a few others in the US and Europe will come about in the same architecture that we have done in Japan.
Yeah, I think to add to that, Sean, it's a dated view, just like Tariq mentioned. We are working very closely with Dish Networks, and similarly, they went through a due diligence. Rakuten Mobile is further ahead in terms of the rollout, but Dish Network did the same assessment of what technologies are available today to build out this zero trust architecture, like Tariq mentioned, in terms of providing just enough access, to parts of the network that are required for the appropriate functioning of the applications, and making sure you're segmenting the network appropriately using the technologies like virtualization and true software-defined networking, and then being able to very quickly isolate and address any issues when, if and more importantly, when an issue arises. These are things that the ORAN and an open environment are the only ways that you can build out. So, and the technologies are there now. The view about that this will just be more sort of appliances may have been valid 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago. Over time, just the way the cloud has been built out through the power of software and the innovation in across private or public cloud that have been built out, have shown how all of these technologies have matured and are ready to be rolled out in the RAN architectures as well.
So staying with the kind of the top critics' views of Open RAN, the other one that I often hear is this issue of vendor complexity, that as we move to a more software-based solution to the cloud, it creates essentially a larger attack surface for malicious actors. How would you respond to those who level that criticism?
I think it's safe to say that yes, it does, but you also increase the number of tools you have to deal with that, right? And it's not just, it doesn't increase the if you use just Open RAN to solve the same problem you are solving for today, that would be one level of argument that sort of says that okay, you're shifting from a hardware-based approach to a software-based approach with white boxes. But that's not what the goal is. When you listen to these folks, right, and you look at where the industry statistics are going, right, the expectation is that private networking, for example, is going to grow dramatically. You already see the massive deployment of small cells and for infill and for extension of capacity, and for the millimeter wave folks for just getting it out there. So you're already putting RAN in more places in larger volumes, and you're going to have to find ways to become more operationally efficient at that, to find ways to become more efficient at the deployment. You're already expanding out what you're trying to do. So if you're if you accept the fact that there's the pressure to expand what RAN does and where it does it and at the scale it does it, you're going to have to find a solution for that. And so this notion that you should keep trying to compress it back into this moat and castle style monolithic black box, as opposed to having a series of well-defined discrete elements with well-defined interfaces that people can then plug in the tooling that you use for both, both AI and ML and automation that you can use to detect and defend against attacks, is a better alternative than to some sort of, replication of a massive black box in places it wasn't meant to go. And so I don't, yes, it increases the threat surface. It also increases the tools you have to deal with that. And the threat surface increase is inevitable given where people want to go with the technology.
Maybe just to add to Sean's, by the way, view, one thing that's really, really interesting is we had about 10 hardware vendors, and they are covering ranges of macro, micro, mini macro, small cell, femto. And in our current architecture, the desire was we needed to become exactly equivalent to what managed Wi-Fi looks like today. You just bring fiber, plug and play, you don't do anything. And in fact, today, we have taken what takes 3 days to activate a single eNode B, and now we drive it to about 4 minutes without anybody going to the field. And what we end up doing with all these vendors, we said, look, here is our interface requirements. And we defined this interface requirements. And of course, it's not simple, it's not easy, but I would tell you it's all doable. It's just that it requires effort. And so we championed this, but of course you got also ORAN Forum that is really working very hard on defining these interfaces. I think the problem will get much easier as standardization on all these interfaces becomes available. And you know, in our case, you know, working with 12 suppliers, and to do this in just a period of like 12 years, I mean, yes, it was work, but I think it was worth every effort that we have put in, because the end result was just remarkable on what's achieved and the autonomy of this network.
Well, moving on from talking about what those who want to throw rocks would say, let's move on to kind of the final question I have for the panel. Let me start with you, Sumit. We're obviously all kind of working through the COVID crisis and pandemic and have yet to emerge on the other side, but it has definitely taught us the importance of access to the digital nature that all of our lives have relied on, whether it be work or school. In many ways, this is also a dimension of security that is also overlooked, and the security to access critical services remotely. Can you walk us through how Open RAN has the potential to expand digital access?
Yeah, you know, I think this is, I sort of give the analogy of when, you know, when we had sort of smaller streets for horse and buggy, to upgrades we made to our highways to have all sorts of automobiles riding on the roads, and all of a sudden the touch points increase, the type of now applications that we use for the highways significantly increase. And this is a moment in time for us, you know, within Quad and globally, to embrace an architecture that enables us to do that, because speeds and feeds of 5G network and next G networks are there. The software that truly enables these new applications to ride on top of that infrastructure is there. And the reason I started with this is because it impacts how you can bring the power of the technology to everyone in the world, and of course, in this case, the nations that are represented in the Quad, truly providing digital equity among the citizens of the country by bringing access to all of this richness of the technology and the capabilities of the applications that can be built in a much more rapid fashion. And to do so, just like Tariq mentioned and all the fellow panelists mentioned, there is no practical way to do this without an open architecture, because a closed architecture just fundamentally relies on one single player to provide the entire innovation, or the innovation is hampered with a very, very, very closed ecosystem. So again, if we envision the world where we want to go from a horse and buggy style infrastructure to this new modern highways that are enabling much richer transportation available to touch point everyone in the country with equity in the digital way, then doing so is only possible in a world where there are standards and open ecosystem to build all of the richness of you know, applications to enable that access. And that to me is extremely promising for every country, because and that's where the governments play a role, because left to its own, it's entirely possible that the people may sort of upgrade to the next gen sort of highway system, if I may, with just still one lane, thinking the only application that's going to be on it will be horse and buggy, and the only place that the streets will go to are the people who own horse and buggies. If you want to truly make this so that it's digital equity with access to everyone, then the entire infrastructure needs to be built out for a range of applications which is available to everyone and every citizen, which enables access in an unparalleled way. And that's only possible through Open RAN.
I think that's a great way to close the session up. I think it ties together the opening remarks that Tohara-san brought to us in terms of the kind of incentives that the government of Japan put out there in order to allow the kind of Open RAN networks that Rakuten has built. And I think your message here closing, Sumit, about the importance of getting government policies right to go from the horse and buggy to the modern highway system is critical. I just happened to be reading a book about transitions of governments thinking about how to respond to technology and innovation, and your horse and buggy to car was actually one of the examples that was given. The government of the state of Pennsylvania actually had a regulation in place to prevent cars from coming into the market by basically saying that they would scare horses, and you had to be able to disassemble your car as soon as a horse was seen and hide it in the bushes. So there is an absolute marriage here between government policy, getting the right incentive structure, and being able to move us from a single lane highway to a multi-lane highway. And I want to thank all of you for the time today and talking about the kind of security conversation around Open RAN. And I think we've laid to rest those criticisms and hopefully look forward to seeing you all soon. Alex, back to you, sir.
Sean, thanks so much. I really enjoy that anecdote that we have to finish up there. Thanks also to the panelists for a really helpful in-depth discussion on the security of Open RAN. We are now going to turn to the final portion of the agenda, which is our closing remarks. And for that, I will turn the floor over to Shinichi Urakawa, who is the chair of the subcommittee on digital economy for our event partner, Keidanren. Urakawa-san, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you. I'm Shinichi Urakawa, chair of subcommittee on digital economy at
Hello, Shinichi. It appears your internet.
Keidanren. I have a few comments as we wrap up. In collaboration with Japanese government, Keidanren Digital Transformation and Society 5.0, which is a
Shinichi, can you hear us?
This order has brought about significant changes in the global society. People's mentality. There have actually been various attempts to control the technology. In times like these, it is critical that we make the most of the potential of digital technology through global cooperation and take on the challenge of creating a new society that is completely different from the past. Open RAN is a symbolic effort to bring diverse countries and companies together to maximize the use of technology. I believe people can produce a new society by combining digital transformation with imagination and creativity by diverse people. This is the first dialogue amongst the four economies to talk about the importance of open. I would like to conclude my remarks by expressing my hope and to have a discussion on the use of technology in this very new era, which will further strengthen the relationship of trust between Quad. Thank you very much.
Urakawa-san, thank you so much for the closing remarks and for the hard work that Keidanren has put into pulling this program together alongside the US Chamber of Commerce, BSA, Assocham India, and the Open RAN Policy Coalition. We greatly value your partnership, and as do we that of the governments of Australia, Japan, India, and the United States. I think it was a wonderful set of speakers today and a lot of rich detail that we've heard. The event will continue with a closed door session tomorrow morning, and we look forward to hearing from a number of speakers there as well. For the time being, I just wanted to thank our audience for joining us today, and we will welcome you at future events on the topic. For now, that will conclude our programming.